couple things that I want to talk about today. You guys will know that have been here for a little while that sometimes my teachings are super structured, a lot of sources, a lot of verses. Sometimes they're more information-based, sometimes they're more philosophical. And then there are days like today that I'm kind of all over the map. This week has been it's been a thing. So there's been a lot of churning and been a lot of stuff. And so I'll just, admittedly, it was hard for me to focus on one thing this week. And so you guys just follow as well as you can. And we'll end up together at the end, right? Okay. So, the first thing that I want to mention is, particularly in this week's Parsha, with especially the goings-on in Israel today, and it seems as though every week the Parsha has fit somehow and has been relevant to the war in Israel currently. And this week's is really, really relevant. Really relevant. There's something that happens in this week's Parsha that is absolutely pivotal, and the fact that it is recorded this way for us is crucial. So there is a debate as to whether, I don't know why it's a debate, because it's ignorant and it's unfounded, but there's a debate as to who owns the land of Israel. I don't mean the nation of Israel, I mean the land, the ground that it's on, right? Whether it's Palestinian or whether it's Israeli or, all these, who are the real occupiers? There's all these discussions, and people get really inflamed over this. They get really angry over this. And the Muslims, the Arabs want to say it's theirs, and Israel wants to say it's theirs. And so this is the seedbed of all of this conflict for all of these years, right? And in this week's Parsha, I don't know if you saw it, but in this week's Parsha, we have the title deed of the land to the family of Abraham through his son Isaac. What is the title deed? What happens? Anybody tell me? What's that? The burial plot. This moment that we read over and we go like, why? I don't understand why this is even in here. Oh, it's nice. It's sweet, right? Oh, it's sweet because Abraham really loved Sarah. It's so sweet that he bought this place for her to be buried. What an honor. And it is all of those things. It definitely is all of those things. However, it's very clear that Abraham is offered this land for free. What a blessing, right? What an incredible blessing that would be. For free, he's grieving, his whole tribe is grieving, all of his disciples are grieving, the women are grieving, the children are grieving, because the matriarch, the mother of all of these people is dead. What an incredible, hospitable blessing this is, for you to offer this for free. Baruch Hashem, God has truly favored Abraham, right? But what does Abraham say? Can't take it. Now, I believe in prophecy because Scripture speaks about it. I have a little bit of trouble with modern day prophets because I've seen too much shiesty stuff. Not to say that there aren't any. I just haven't seen many. Does Abraham foresee? I don't know. Does Abraham have an unction? Does he have an inspiration? Does he have a word, a thus says the Lord from Hashem? I don't know. What is it in Abraham's mind and heart that forces him to negotiate and purchase this land instead of receiving the blessing that Hashem has given him while he's broken and mourning and hurting? What is it in Abraham's psyche, in his mind, in his spirit? I don't know what even to call it. And it's impossible to psychoanalyze him all these years later. Of course, Judaism has a lot of ways of explaining this. Christianity has a lot of ways of explaining this. But just to sit and think about what causes Abraham to say, no, I'm not going to take it for nothing. I am going to pay for it. And he speaks of it loudly in the hearing of all of the witnesses. And so this Parsha is really ironic because the name of it is Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, but it actually begins with her death. And so what are we supposed to learn from this? What is it supposed to be teaching us, and how are we supposed to think about this? Well, one of the ways is to understand that in Sarah's giving up of her life and her laying down her life and her final breathing her last breath, she provides life for the entire nation of Israel and for the rest of its securing, for its existence. The cave of Machpelah in Hebron is the title deed to the land. Before the nation of Israel ever comes out of Egypt, God tells them when they come out, walk the land, right? Walk the land. This is your land I'm giving you. Before that even happens, God secures Abraham's ownership of the land, the title deed at the cave of Machpelah. So Sarah, even in her death, provides life for not only her husband and her family and her children, but for the nation that was promised to come from her. There is so much we could talk about as far as you ladies go, and the mothers that are in here, the mothers that are watching. You produce life. It's what you do. That's what God. That's how God wired you. That's the gift that He gave you. You produce life. And the beautiful honoring of Sarah in this parsha is that even after her death, her producing life continues to happen. It continues to go on. We also hear about Rebecca, and the sages have a really neat way of linking these two stories together, because in the commentary of the sages, they say that Hashem never lets one righteous person pass before their predecessor comes onto the scene. So in the story of Sarah and Rebecca, we have this beautiful crossfade, this beautiful overlap of Sarah's life ending and Rebecca, and we're introduced to Rebecca. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. So this, it's funny to me, it's interesting that we laud Abraham and we heap praises on Abraham. He's, Abraham Avinu, Abraham our father, and he is, he's the first, he's the Hebrew, he's all of these things. And yet the title deed of the land is not in Abraham's merit, it's in Sarah's merit. And so I always like to point that out when we come to this parsha. I think it's crucially important, especially, as I said, where we are kind of today. So I want to continue the second part of this. Again, stay with me. Talking about observance and about what this conversation we began the last few weeks. I'm reading a lot right now about observance. And so hopefully as I start to develop some different thoughts and things, we can make some progress on here, on this. Talking about observance, I want some feedback from you guys, both for your good and for my good. It's going to help me and you, hopefully. So when we say observance, right? We say observance. What are some other words that pop into your head when you hear me say observance? What? Halakah, okay. And we'll define that particularly, because that's a good one. What else are some words that pop it when PJ says observance? What comes into your mind? Shema? Shamar. Guarding? Okay. Good. Let me just do this for... Good thing I know a little bit of Hebrew. What else? Practice. Practices. Good. That's a good one. All right. What else? Huh? Ritual. Did you say ritual? What did you say, Kyle? Repetition. Anything else?
I think what you said, I think Shema, like
Shema would be, yeah. What else? Anybody else? I'm going to put one up here that I like. You won't be able to read it, but liturgy. Anything else?
Think of remembrance.
Remembrance. Okay, good. That's very good. Okay, what else? Worship. Okay, good. I'm thinking of another one with obedience. Okay, that's a pretty good list. This is helpful to me because in my context for this is kind of two ways. And so let me just get a show of hands, if you don't mind. How many of you grew up in a what I would call high church setting? High church is probably not the good right term. In like a Catholic or Episcopal kind of background. How many of you grew up in that kind of background? Miss Celia, yep, you did. I know, yep. Okay, so two of y'all. Many of you watching probably by live stream, but these backgrounds tend to be very ritualistic, right? Very liturgical, right? I joked the last few weeks, I grew up Southern Baptist. The most ritual we had was that you had a bulletin every Sunday morning. How many of you grew up Baptist? All right, or like Nazarene or something in that kind of family, right? And then some of y'all were Pentecostal where there's no order of service. The only person that knows the order of service is the Spirit himself. Right? Yeah. So in a spectrum from hyper liturgy to no liturgy, you have this spectrum. But there actually is liturgy all the way through. Even in spontaneous services, there is liturgy. There is ritual, even in those places. Because as random as it may feel like that a spirit-led, quote-unquote, service is, you go to all kind of spirit-led churches and you're going to kind of see similar things. So there's a liturgy, there's a ritual there. So, okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself too much. But these are helpful words because I didn't grow up in a liturgical background. And then being from a Baptist church, and then as a young man in high school, getting more into the kind of spirit-filled world. And I keep doing this, not to say it's not spirit-filled, but it's to say that it's not any more spirit-filled than the other places that they consider not spirit-filled. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. You go from a place where you have almost no ritual and no liturgy to a circle where there is absolutely nothing like written down, nothing's planned, and those kinds of things. And at least in the Baptist world, we were really good about education. You learned Bible verses, right? You memorized Bible verses, and you got little stars in Sunday school. I was terrible at it, so were reinforced with a good educational structure. One thing the Baptists do phenomenally well is they educate really, really well. And you go from that to a more kind of, non-denominational or spirit-filled type of atmosphere, and even that kind of falls away a little bit. So there's a gradient here of kind of liturgy and ritual, and it's so important, which is why I want to talk about it, and why I wanted to get a kind of a feel for the spectrum. I kind of had a good idea of where everybody was, but I just wanted to have a feel for it. So that's the background, the world that most of us come from. Right? Not super high in ritual and liturgy. And yet we're studying the sages and the practices, as Caleb said, of a religion and a lifestyle, Judaism, which is the king of ritual. And so there can be a like an overwhelming feeling, or there can be like I don't know about this feeling. There can be a lot of complications as we try to make this transition and figure out where we fit. Because the truth of the matter is that there is a halakah. There's a halakah for Judaism. But you know what doesn't exist anywhere in the world that I can find? No halakah exists for Gentiles. Which is us. So we are on a spectrum here, trying to figure out how to make this thing work together. And so some on the gradient, some just decide that there's going to be no ritual and no liturgy, and we're going to make it up as we go, which is cool. And then some go, no, we're going to do everything the Jewish people do. And there's kind of two extremes there, if you want to call them extremes. And so there's a lot to learn and a lot to think about as we begin to talk about observance and what that looks like. Here's one of the main, if you're writing anything down, this is not a note-taking kind of message, but if you feel led to take notes, here's a good one. We have to remember that when we talk about, and I'll try to remind you of this. When I talk about observance, okay, we talk about halakah, we talk about guarding. These two are good together because there's some distinctions here in my mind. We talk about all of these things. We are not talking about a service, okay? Because those of you that grew up Catholic, you have a liturgy for Mass, but you don't necessarily have a liturgy for life, right? You have it's very structured for even maybe some who grew up in certain parts of of synagogue. You have a liturgy for synagogue, but then what happens to the rest of life? Even in our Protestant, and more laxed kind of congregations, we have a liturgy for service, even a non-denominational service. You know that you're going to have a welcome. You're going to have a couple of songs. You may or may not have lights and a fog machine. Depends on dry ice or whatever, and lasers and stuff. I don't know. It just depends on where you are. You're going to have an offering taken, usually not received, but taken. And then you're gonna have a message, and then you're gonna have an altar call, right? That's the liturgy, yeah? And the songs are going to be of a certain bent. The message is going to be of a certain bent. You kind of know what you're gonna get, right? You usually know what you're gonna get by the name of the church, right? The Oasis. Yeah, I know. I already know what the message is gonna be about, right? And so you kind of, these are liturgy. When I talk about observance and us increasing our observance throughout this next year, I am not talking about we're moving towards a Torah service on Shabbat mornings. I want to be really clear. Because liturgy has a place in a service or a mass or those kinds of things. The question is, do we have a liturgy for the rest of our lives? Do we have observance? Do we have a halakah? Are we concerned about shamaring? That's Hebrew English. Are we worried about our practices and what we do? Are we practicing Shema whenever we leave this place? Because you know what? Everybody's their best here. Everybody's their best here. I don't want to fool myself, but I would like to think we do a little better than average at not having masks. But even here we do. At some point, you're going to walk in here feeling like absolute dog crud, and somebody's going to say, hey, how's it going? You're going to go, it's great. Lying through your freaking teeth. Hopefully, our masks are getting thinner and thinner, and more, we're able to tell with each other and go like, I called bull on that. But we're all our best here. The question is, how do we structure our lives, and how do we look at our lives to where we have a liturgy and observance, a halakah for the rest of our lives? Now, let's talk about halakah just for a second. I wasn't planning on this, but thank you, Ms. Robin. When we say the word halakah, when I say the word halakah, most of the time I have in my head a picture different than what a Jewish person would hear when I say the word halakah, an observant Jewish person, when we say the word halakah. When we say the word halakah, we just go, well, that's just how you walk out the commandments. It's whatever the Jewish people do. But understand that in the strictest sense, the word or the idea of halakah has a legal ramification. It has a legal meaning, it is legal. It's legal in its very essence. The idea being that Hashem gave the Torah to Israel and gave them not only the Torah itself, but the oral Torah that we've talked about, and then gave them judges and sages, right, in order to create rulings with authority. And it's so hard for us to imagine because we have our religious lives and then we have our civil lives. And those two things usually don't mix very often. If you break a Torah or a biblical commandment in the Western Christian church, nobody cares. Unless you really hurt somebody, like you kill a bunch of people or, you're a pedophile or whatever. But usually people don't care. If you run a stop sign, you're going to get a ticket, right? But if you gossip about somebody, nobody's going to write you a ticket. You're not going to get brought before the judge. This is one of the areas where Judaism and Christianity differ so much. Because we don't conflate the two. Because this is not an accurate statement, but I'm going to make it because I want to. In Christianity, we have no law. Right? Yeah, but there's the law of Christ. Yeah, whatever. We have no law. So anybody can do whatever you want, right? It's a free fall. It's a smorgasbord. It's been so bad that now whenever we do cross a line of offense, even though we have scriptural explanation on how to handle offense, we still don't do it. Not because we don't know how, because it's literally like go to them. If it doesn't work, take people with you. If that doesn't work, go before the elders. We literally have it spelled out item by item by item. We can read, it's right here, right? It's not that we don't have the instructions on how to do it. We are not in that mindset. It's not who we are. We're Americans or we're Westerners, and you leave us alone. And what we do is our business. And if it hurts you, I'll say I'm sorry, placate me, and then we'll move on. But if it was a legal standing, if it was halakha that whenever I offended JB, he has the right to take me before Brady, who's a judge. Oh wait, I didn't mean to do that. That's their brothers-in-law, so that.
Sounds like fun to me.
It works for Brady. Okay, whatever. Next time it'll be the other way around. But you understand what I'm saying? If I offend you, you have the legal right to take me before the local judge. And there's an actual consequence. There's an actual accountability. And there are steps that have to be taken, and the whole community knows about it. Then, I don't know, we say, yeah, but we have the Spirit that convicts us. How far has that gotten us? Right? We are literally murdering each other's reputations within the kingdom. We are killing each other within the kingdom, and there's no consequence. So I want you to understand the weight of halakah. When we say halakah, this is one of the reasons why if you ever tell a Jewish person, we're like, yeah, well, I'm practicing keeping Shabbat. They're like, why? Why would you do that? Don't do that. Because they understand the weight of what it means to surrender to a halakhic lifestyle, right? Okay. Which, by the way, is the main reason we don't have and will not have for the foreseeable future a Torah scroll. I know everybody wants one because it makes us feel all Jewish, like closer to the Hebrews. But there is a halakah that surrounds the possession of a Torah scroll, of a Sefer Torah. In that, the room that Sefer Torah is in now takes on a higher level of Kedusha. And so our little feral children that run in around here, and I don't say anything about it because this is a living room and this is what we want it to be, that would not be able to happen. Our joking and cutting up and our, talking and visiting that what we do would not be able to happen. A lot of things would have to change about our attitudes and how we approach this day, this service, and all of that kind of stuff. You understand? And I'm not going to foist that on us because we are not there. That's not how we didn't grow up that way. We're not used to that, right? And that's why I say that one of the things I appreciate about the Catholic Church is that there is that reverence that, okay, you're in a different space now. You walk into that sanctuary, you're in a different space now. The problem I have, not the problem, it doesn't matter, but the challenge that I have is that reverence should be carried out of that building and that it should go. But the question is, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? Because the service in church or in fellowship is made for reverence. It's made for reverence. Well, the question is, how does that transfer out of there? Let me give you a hint. It's not about carrying the spirit of reverence with you. The spirit of reverence leaves by the time you get to the car. Am I lying? Those of you that have been in charismatic, you'll love this. The glow, the residue, right? I saw the Shekinah this morning in the ceiling. I felt the residue for days. No. Reverence in a. I'm not trying to be. These used to be my people, okay? I'm not making fun of people that I used to say this. I'm like, oh, look, I saw it. No, you didn't. 25 more minutes. All right. The spirit of reverence is not what we need. What creates when we come into service, do we always come in with a spirit of reverence? Are we always ready to set God apart and glorify Him? No, you know how I know how? Because some of us are cracking jokes literally 30 seconds before the shofar blows. We're not in an attitude of reverence, but man, we flip super quick. What is the difference? What is the mechanism? It's ritual. It's ritual. When you hear that shofar blow, things are different now. Why? Because we did something. We have a structure, right? That our OAM has created over years. We've created a structure, a service structure. It's loose, it's whatever. We don't have bulletins or any of that kind of stuff. You can't follow along most of the time, but there is a structure that I know about. And when you hear that shofar, now it's time to be reverent. We've entered a different time. Because of something we do. And so the key is to take the ritual that creates a sacred moment in service and fill the rest of our lives not with a spiritual idea, not with a motivation or an inspiration, but with ritual, with practice, with a sense towards guarding that which we experience when we're together. Am I making sense? It's not the sense of holiness that we need to continue, because you can't do that. You can't just muster the sense of reverence and holiness on you, because sometimes days you feel like crap. Some days you're just tired, you hurt, you're confused, your mind is foggy, you're stressed, you're sad, you're whatever. You're off focus, you're distracted. And it's hard to just muster up that sense of reverence. But if you have a system of ritual, if you have a system of observance, if you have a system of practice, then it makes that a lot easier. So I don't want to read many notes today, but I did write down some what I think is good stuff. So John 1, the Gospel of John 1, this is the calling of Yeshua's first disciples. And so it says in John 1, chapter 1, verse 35, it says, again the next day John was standing with two of his disciples and watched Yeshua walking by, and he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard him say this, and they followed Yeshua. Yeshua turned around and saw them following, and he said to them, who's reading? Is anybody reading along? No? Yeah. 35, we start in 35. He turns around to them and he says, basically, what do you want? What do you want with me? What do you seek? What are you looking for? What are you after? What do you want? And so, the question I want to ask us is the same question Yeshua asks his first disciples: what do you want? What do you want? So let's just be real, family. Somebody volunteer. What do you want? I'm not looking at anybody in particular. I'm doing that trick where you look over by his head. What do you want? Somebody tell me. What do you want? What do you mean? What do you? I don't mean like I want a McLaren, and that's a sports car. Oh, wait, never mind. I want a Ferrari. Okay, everybody knows that. I want a Lamborghini. No, I mean, in your bones. I don't mean superficial things. I mean in your bones. When you are laying on your deathbed. Wow, that escalated quickly. When you're laying on your and you're thinking over your whole life. What do you want to have remembered and have been remembered for? What do you want? Well done. What else? You made a difference. Good. What else? Who's the person you want to be? Let's get real personal. Who's the person you want to be?
Led my family in the right direction.
Okay, good. Led your family in the right direction. What else? Who do you want to be? What do you want? You want to matter. Amen. I want to matter. Excellent. Wisdom, right?
Roy says
Life abundant, right?
I think
Kindness? Good. See, we all have these, if we scrape off all the stress of life and all the stuff and just the muck of being terrestrial, people, if we scrape off the consumerism that clouds our lives and the have-to-haves and all the stress and we don't do Christmas anymore, but we actually spend more money for Hanukkah because we have to buy 8 gifts now instead of just 9 gifts, whatever, Huh? I'm sorry. It's my wife's favorite time of the year. But if we scrape off all of that stuff, every one of us has some wants. And you might be in your teens or your 20s, or your 60s, the fact that there is a picture, an ideal picture of what we all have of who we are supposed to be and how we are supposed to interact with this life, everybody has that picture. You might have not seen it in a while, but everybody has that picture of what is ideal. You read scripture and you're reading ideals and you go, how do I get from here to there? And the answer is ritual. It's a life liturgy, not a liturgy for services. It's a life liturgy. What do you want? So I want to ask you guys this week, because this topic is going to come back every week until I feel like we've exhausted it and I'm satisfied. So, sorry. But it comes down to, what do we want? Who do we want to be for ourselves? Because I appreciate wanting to help and wanting to serve others, and that absolutely, absolutely. But if I can offer that maybe we have to live with ourselves first. And you know what? I'll just speak for me. It's easy for me to stay busy, especially if I'm helping other people, because I have a little bit of a savior complex. I mean, I think you have to be a pastor, a little bit. It's so easy for me to stay busy and distracted. The hardest thing to do is be quiet. Because when I'm quiet, then I'm with me. And I don't always like that. Oh, let's just be honest, I rarely like that. I'm not asking for a show of hands. This is for you to think about yourself. How many of you would say, yeah, that's true. That's really what it gets down to. And many times, oh boy. Many times we use the commandment to serve others. We use the spiritual ethic to serve others and to be a light to others. We use it as a replacement for having to deal with us. And so sometimes a sacred commandment, a sacred mission, a ministry, a service really is not a service for God or for others, but sometimes maybe a service is just a balm that soothes our own chaos. Question is that a bad thing? Well, at the end of the day, are you happy with you? Can you live with you? And if you can't live with you, then can the people that you love the most live with you? Because I've been a little bit of a bear this week. And you know what? Not only do I not like it, but the reality on the ground is that it makes the whole house miserable. So I could be out visiting and serving and praying for and counseling and marrying and bearing and doing all the things all week long, and I can come home tired at night going, you know what? I did ministry today. And I can still be ugly to my kids and ugly to my wife and kick the dog, the cat, and I can still do all of that because I'm not okay. You see what I'm so I'm not trying to push back at serving others. Yes, that's a given that we should do that. But what I've seen over and over and over and over and over in my ministry life and in my church life is I've seen a bunch of people who put service of others over well-being, service of self and well-being, because we were taught that that was pride. And that you should always put others before yourself. And that is all true. That's scripture. That's gospel. It's red letter, right? But who's saying those words? The Son of Man is saying those words. I don't know how many anxieties or insecurities or complexes Yeshua had. I don't know. I know this may be sacrilegious. Sorry. Well, if you're still listening, you're okay with this next statement. I don't know if Yeshua laid down at night and said, thank you for all the opportunity to serve you, Father, but I feel like crap. I'm depressed. I don't like me. I don't know. See, we say he was 100% God and 100% man until we start talking about what a man really is, what a human really is. Think, oh yeah, but that's not. When we talk about observance, I don't care if you do Erev Shabbat a certain way. I don't care if you do certain things a certain way as far as legal halakah goes. My focus is, I think those are good, and we're going to talk about that as we go on, but my focus is not in that. My focus is in building a life of ritual that reinforces whatever your answers to this question is. Whatever your answers to this question is, you don't get there by the power of positive thinking. You don't get there by praying really hard like we talked last week and having faith, whatever that means, all right, or receiving, or whatever, all the things that we go through, which all of them are rituals in their own right. To me, they just don't work. They're not effective. So whatever the answers to this question is, we have to put ritual in our life. We have to put things, but and I can hear my old non-denominational self rising up and going, yeah, but ritual quenches the spirit. Right? We don't want too much structure in services because then the spirit doesn't have room to move. When in actuality, I love just think about this. We have liturgy is physical. Ritual is physical. We call it being obedient to the commandments, to the Torah. That's why I put obedience there. Obedience to the Torah is physical. One of the beautiful things about the Torah is that the Torah intersects real life. What you eat, where you go, who you're with. It intersects real, tangible life. Torah is the base ritual that we're given. It's the base liturgy we're given, not for services, because in actuality, there's no description of a Torah service in the Torah. Because the Torah is not necessarily concerned about Shabbat service at OAM. The Torah is concerned about a life liturgy, about a life ritual. And it gives you real physical things to do in order to reinforce and to teach an ethic. So we talked several weeks ago about halakah, which is the legal, how you walk the Torah. And then the other big circle is musar, right? Musar, which is the ethic, the ethical part of it. And the problem is, sometimes we want to decode the ritual to get the inner meaning and go, what is this trying to teach me? Oh, well, I have the point of the ritual, so now I don't need the ritual.
So you didn't learn anything.
Yeah, does that make sense? All of us do this. We all do this. We go, I don't have to light candles on Friday because I understand the importance of Shabbat. No, you don't. Just by that thought, that train of thought, you don't understand. You don't. So how many of y'all have been in the military? Brady, JB, Travis, right? Served in the military. My best friend in college went into the Marine Corps while we were best friends. And I remember this like it was yesterday, him coming back and telling me like they teach you how to shave all over again. Like you don't know anything. I don't, you guys are a different generation and all that. But I know for him, he's like, you go in thinking you know how to live, like how to be a guy, and they completely strip you down. They teach you how to dress, how to hygiene, all these, they teach you, what is that? It's a ritual. It's a liturgy. How in the world, this always boggled my mind because I never was in the military, but how do you take 40 or 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 18-year-old knuckleheads full of you-know-what and vinegar? I'm talking about guys, obviously, or whatever. And in how long is basic? 6 weeks? 8 weeks? 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Some of y'all may have needed a longer time than others. And you take them and you make them into a cohesive unit where they function together. How is that possible? Well, first of all, you have to start out with the idea, right, that if you don't do these things, these rituals, then either you are going to die or you might get somebody else killed, right? That's like okay. Yeah, then that kind of shapes then how you look at the ritual. You may not understand why you're doing these things, holding your body in weird positions and having a certain order of the day and doing all these things. You might not understand why those individual things are, but you understand the main goal. You may not have understood until 6 months after your basic. And we talk about this when we talk about parents telling your kids how to clean their room, et cetera, right? Gymnastics. We watched our girls do competitive gymnastics, and some of the exercises they had to do is like, is your body supposed to be able to do that? But when you watch them do their floor routine, you're like, oh, Okay. In martial arts, we have all these weird drills that we do and all these certain ways that you have to move your body in order for things to flow and go back and forth. And you do it in little pieces and little chunks. And you go, this feels so dumb. This feels over. Can we stop doing this already? It's been a half an hour. No, your stance is like this. No, it's too short. It's got to be like that. No, that's too long. No, it's got to be, no. Until you get the feeling of what it feels like, where you can close your eyes and you can do that stance at that measurement every single time. It's a feeling that you have. It becomes a part of who you are. And then you get into a sparring match where there's somebody bigger than you who's literally trying to take your head off, and you go, oh, okay. Now I understand why this had to be muscle memory. It had to be a part. But you don't get it by reading a book. You don't get it by watching some YouTube videos and understanding the concepts. If we short circuit the ritual process, then we didn't learn anything. And so many times we're trying to figure out we're trying to figure out the solution, and really it's all about physical motion. It's about putting ourselves through those paces. And there are positive and negative rituals. I love the Haftarah today. When I heard this Haftarah, I used to hear it preached all the time. And the way I heard it preached in a Pentecostal church was, you know how they knew King David was dead? Yeah, they threw a beautiful young lady in his bed. When the king didn't move, they said, oh, he's dead. You know why? Because King David had a ritual. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't like to talk about that. There are positive and negative rituals. There are rituals that will reinforce the what do I want question, and there are rituals that will take us the other way. I'm so glad Kyle said, this is really what got me sparked last week, so it's his fault. When compromise is a ritual. Compromise is a ritual. It's something you do that reinforces a behavior and makes it easier to do the next time. There's a great study, a book that I'm reading right now, a fantastic, it's just, by this scholar named Mary Douglas in the 30s. And in the book, part of her doctoral work, she did a study on the Los Alamos nuclear facility in New Mexico. And did a study on the scientists that worked there. Now, she's a theologian, philosopher and theologian. But what she noticed is that the scientists had a very particular way of doing things. They had a script of where you walked, when you walked, how you interacted with machinery. They had signs that they had made up, their own kind of language that they had made up within the lab to communicate different things. And she was amazed at the complexity of the ritual they had developed. And the question is why? To be better scientists, but in this particular case, because it's a nuclear facility. Because literally, one step outside of the ritual and kaboom. Yeah, vaporized, right? And she began to liken what she studied at Los Alamos to the Levitical system in the temple. Remember I've told you, some of you guys, we've studied a little bit about this, but in the temple, you know, there are levels of Kedusha, places that certain people can't go because holiness is all about restriction, right? In the temple, we know from the Mishnah that there were markers on the walls at certain places of the temple as a visual reminder, oh, I'm not. Even if you were distracted and forgot where you were, you would look and see these markers about like a wainscoting. They were up where you could see them. Because crossing that line meant death. Again, not that God would vaporize you. A Levitical archer would shoot you in the neck. Yeah, because God isn't safe. That's the point. Thank you. I got off track. Because God isn't safe. Right. Yeah, which is exactly right. And so Mary Douglas is, and I'm still doing the reading in the book, but it's been just like, and here's the thing. That level of appreciation for the holiness, or we can say the destructive power of God, potential of God, was never supposed to stay in the temple. The people were to observe the ritual as a way to say, this is how you're supposed to live the rest of your life. with this level of respect, fear of God, right? I hope by some of these ideas you're seeing how far off we are maybe, and how this is just not part of our world, right? So figuring out, for those scientists or for those Levites, it's not enough to decode the ritual and go, oh, wait, I see what you're trying to do here. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I get it. You're holy. Okay, I got it. So I'm just going to walk over here because I understand. I know I'm not supposed to be here, like according to your little ritual or whatever, but like I get it, and so I'm going to go over here anyway. You understand what I'm saying? And we do this all the time. I've been really messy and really personal, so I'll just end by hacking everybody off that I haven't yet before. I know the Sabbath is holy. I get it. I get it. It says it from the very beginning. I get it. It says it over and over and over. I get it. And I know there are certain restrictions on the Sabbath that I'm not supposed to do that keep it holy, right? Right? Because that's, yeah, right? But I got to get gas for my mower because I got to mow tomorrow. Or, but everybody's, like all my siblings are going all my brothers, we're all getting together and they're all going and I never get a chance to see them. And we're going to go eat and stuff. So, I can't not. You understand what I'm saying? If the Levites would have treated the holiness of God like that in the temple, they would have been shot with an arrow. But you see how we do that very same thing all the time. All the time. Because the lines of holiness are not clear enough drawn in our lives because the ritual, we don't have any ritual. We're not ritualistic people. We're not ritualistic people as a whole, as a society. And so we treat church, Shabbat fellowship, as a holy time, and the rest of our week like, I do what I want. So, I hope this is kind of giving you some things to think about, chew on a little bit. I want you guys this week to ask yourself the question, what do I want? And then part B to that is, what rituals, what liturgy do I have in my life? What practices do I have that are teaching me the things that I want?